Oh, hey, you made it to lesson 3 of EO10. Today we are focusing all about logarithms and what those mean. And no, it is not just a log that has rhythm, but I think that's funnier than what they actually are. So there's your log that has some rhythm. Okay, so what actually are logarithms? Well, we've been talking about inverse functions and how to find an inverse algebraically or using a table or graphically. So let's look at this exponential function. We have talked about how in a table, we can switch the values. Well, first let's fill in this table. Okay, so what does it mean to be an exponential? Let's start with the positives first because I think you all are more comfortable with that. If we plug in 2 for x, that's 3 squared, which is 9. Okay, I thought I clicked on red, but all right. 3 to the first power would just be 3. 3 to the 0 power is 1. Now 3 to the negative 1 power, remember that that's going to flip into the reciprocal. Okay, so this is 1 over 3. 3 to the negative 2 would be 1 over 3 squared. Okay, so this is going to be 1/3 here, and this is 1/9. All right. Now, if we're finding the inverse, all we need to do is switch those coordinates. So we have 1/9, -2, we have 1/3, -1, we have 1, 0, 3, 1, and 9, 2. Groovy, right? We're good on that, hopefully. Seen it, I think, in the past 2 videos. Okay, well, we also talked about how we can find this algebraically, and we can switch to x and y's. So if this is my original, y equals 3 to the x, I'm going to switch that and say x is equal to 3 to the y. Well, now hold up, Miss L. How in the world do you solve this, right? Typically, if this was a number, we could figure that out. You could take the square root, the cube root, the fourth root. But with a variable, how do we solve for y here? This is where logarithms come into play. So here's our definition of a logarithm with base b. Basically, I'm looking at this part right here, okay? We read this as log base b of y is equal to x. We can only say this if b to the x power is equal to y. Okay, so in our example of an exponential function, when we were taking the inverse and we switched the x and the y's, and we had x is equal to 3 to the y power. Okay, so now let's read this again. Log base b of y is equal to x if b to the x power is equal to y. So if we're looking at here and match this up here, our base is going to be b, so our base is b. So right away we can say, okay, well, log base 3 of what? We need this y here, which is what our exponential is equal to. So that's x. So log base 3 of x is equal to y. That would be my inverse function. My inverse function of x would be log base 3 of x. Pretty cool, right? I want you to pause and write this in your toolkit. And really the main thing I want you to write down is this, with maybe this as your title. And if you need to jot this down so that you know how to say those things, do so. Okay, so pause and we'll come back together. Okay, now that you've got that, you might be saying, wait, Miss L, what in the world? Can we practice that? So let's do that. Okay, in the corner here, I've kind of color-coded the pieces of the log and the exponential so we can match these up, right? So we said that the log base b of y is equal to x. So the base of your exponent, okay, b raised to what power essentially is going to give you y, okay? So let's take a look. If we were just going to rewrite these as exponents, okay, so if we have log base 2, whoa, I don't know why it's trying to write, log base 2 of 16 is equal to 4. What this is saying, it's saying 2 to the 4th power is going to give me 16. Does that make sense? Okay, let's look at another one. Log base 12 of 12 gives me 1. So again, what this is saying is 12 raised to the first power gives me 12. That one's confusing because it has the same number, so let's do another one. Let's go down here. Always start with your base, 1/4. Okay, your answer is your exponent. So 1/4 to the -1 gives me 4. I'm just rewriting these so we get used to working with logs. And last one, 4 to the 0 power gives me 1. Okay, well, can we go to the other way? What if we have an exponent, but we want to write this as a log? Okay, so now we've got, excuse me, 5 squared is equal to 25. Look back at our little diagram here. Okay, 5 squared is equal to 25. Your 5 is in the base place. Your 2 is the exponent, and your 25 is our output. Okay, so I'm going to write this as, whoops, log base 5, log base 5 of 25 is equal to 2. Okay, you following? Hopefully. Let's do another one. 8 to the 2/3 power equals 4. So my base is 8, my exponent is 2/3. So log base 8, okay? And you can put parentheses if you want to, you don't need to. Log base 8 of 4 is equal to 2/3. Excuse me. Okay, one more. Let's do 6 to the -3rd power is 1/216. So we can say that the log base 6 of, I am going to use parentheses just so it doesn't get too messy, is equal to -3. And that's exactly how we write it. Okay? So I want you to try something for me. Can we evaluate this? Or actually, I'll show you one first and then you can try it. If we now know how to rewrite them, we've just learned how to rewrite a log into exponential form, an exponential form into logarithmic form. Can we evaluate logs? What does that mean to evaluate a log? Okay, so if we look at this, what this is really asking is 4, because this, we can imagine that this has like a question mark, right? What does that equal? 4 to the what power is going to give me 64. So you could think of this as 4 to the x power is going to give me 64. And what is x? Well, if you don't know that, right, we could try some things. 4 squared, 16. If you really don't know, use your calculator, right? 4 to the 3rd power, check that out, 64. So x is going to be 3. So our log base 4 of 64 is equal to 3. Okay, so now I want you to pause and I want you to try and evaluate log base 36 of 6. What does that equal? Ready, go. Okay, let's see how you did. Remember that this means 36 to the what power is going to give me 6. Now this is a little confusing because it gets smaller, right? Well, remember that we can have negatives because 36 to the -2 power is the same thing as saying the square root of 36, which is 6. Okay? And that is wrong. So I just told you a goof because remember that negative flips it. So that's super wrong. So hopefully you were screaming at your screen like, Miss L, that is very wrong. To take the square root, we do want to do that, but we need to raise this to the 1/2 power. Remember that like a cube root, that would be the 1/3 power, the 4th root, that would be the 1/4 power. So we have to raise this to the 1/2 power to get an output of 6. Therefore, log base 36 of 6 is going to be 1/2. Okay, so hopefully you did that better than I did the first go round. All right, the last thing I want to mention is maybe you have seen log by itself, or maybe you've seen this thing called ln. In your calculator, there's a log button, okay? There's a log button right there. What this log button does is it's a base 10. So here we have a base 36, we've had a base 4. The calculator always does a log base 10. So we could evaluate things with a base 10 easily with a calculator. Just press the log button and whatever you're taking the log of. So if you said, for example, log of 64, like we did before, but with base 10, all we would have to do is use your calculator, press the log button, oops, and plug in 64, and we get 1.8. 1.81, we'll round it to. So 10 to the 1.8 power will give us 64. Okay, so that's something that you can do in your calculator. But that only works with base 10. Then there's also this thing called ln, and that uses E. But we are going to keep E for Math 4, so don't worry about it if you see anything that says ln. So basically, right, people have 10 fingers and 10 toes. It makes sense to use base 10. Naturally. So funny. So yeah, we are not going to use anything that uses E, but we might see base 10, and we definitely will see using different bases like we just went over in this lesson. So as your exit slip today, I want you in your own words to try and describe what it means. What is a logarithm? What is it? Okay. Now I want you to practice how fun these logs are and log into Clever and complete your last homework assignment for this week. In the book, this is 5.2 if you want extra resources, and remember that it's due Tuesday night at midnight. Let me know if you have any questions. Bye, y'all.